They don't call it caught on camera for nothing, because once the footage exists, the mask can't stay on. And when it comes to 15 disturbing Meghan Markle moments when she went too far and caught on camera, the controversy isn't just what happened, it's the chilling pattern people say they keep noticing: tragedy, tradition, and other people's pain suddenly becoming the perfect backdrop for a spotlight. Let's talk about the moment that still makes people's stomachs turn, because it wasn't a red carpet misstep. It wasn't a fashion slip. It was grief. Fresh grief, public grief, and critics say it looked like a stage. The Uvalde school shooting left the town shattered: 19 children, 2 teachers, a wound that doesn't close. The air in places like that isn't just sad, it's heavy, it's silent. It's the kind of heartbreak where people can't even find words. And then, according to this transcript, just 2 days later, Meghan shows up. Not as a local, not as someone with ties, not as family, not as a friend, as a headline. And that's the part that makes people furious. The claim that while everyone else saw mourning, she saw optics. The report says she arrived, visited the memorial site, placed flowers, bowed, actions that could look compassionate, unless you believe the detail that flips the entire scene into something darker, that she came with her own cameraman to get the perfect shot for social media. Because if that's true, then suddenly it's not a kind gesture. It becomes a set, a production, a carefully framed moment where tragedy is the background and she's the subject. And critics don't stop there. This transcript says she allegedly demanded access to the hospital to take photos with survivors. Let that sink in. Survivors in a hospital after a massacre. If you're a grieving parent watching this, what does that feel like? Like support or like being used? Now here's where the narrative gets even more poisonous, because the voice in the transcript doesn't treat Uvalde as a one-off mistake. It frames it as a repeat behavior, pointing to another moment involving a graveyard, claiming they shut down a graveyard, walked over gravestones, and utilized the dead for promotion. The word used is brutal, despicable. And that's why this story hits so hard, because it's not just one clip, it's the suggestion of a pattern. Attention first, consequences later.
So it's just, of course it's important that public figures respond to this tragedy, and that's the most ghastliest of tragedy, but you can't help thinking there's a heavy dollop of opportunism and insincerity in this, which I think most people would find, not to their liking.
This is not Meghan's first time doing this. In 2020, she and Harry shut down a graveyard in California, walked over the gravestones of other men, soldiers who died. So this is not their first time, Harry and Meghan's first time, utilizing the dead to promote themselves.
This is not Bean's first time doing this. In 2020, she and Harry shut down a graveyard in California, walked over the gravestones of other men, soldiers who died. So this is not their first time, Harry and Meghan's first time utilizing the dead to promote themselves. And that's kind of despicable, really. And that is not even the worst. She reportedly demanded to be allowed into the hospital to take photos of herself with survivors. And after that clip, the mood gets colder, because the transcript pivots from tragedy to disaster and claims even a wildfire became content. A wildfire doesn't look cinematic when you're the one losing everything. It's smoke in your throat. It's sirens. It's the sound of families trying to decide what to grab in 30 seconds before their lives burn. But according to the transcript, a wildfire in Altadena became another perfect opportunity, with the claim she drove over 2 hours while the fire was still burning because the attention couldn't wait. And then comes the line that makes it feel downright predatory: the accusation that she trespassed on burned down properties and later sold the images to TMZ for profit. Not helped, not donated, not quietly supported. Sold. If that allegation is true, it's not bad judgment. It's a business move made on the backs of people who just watched their homes turn to ash. And that's exactly why this transcript calls it beyond pathetic, because it paints a picture of someone treating disaster like a photo shoot location.
Last year, they were just looking for the right photo opportunities. They just are desperate to continue to be seen as members of the British royal family. And again, that's what they were trying to do when walking through the ashes of, people's entire lives. Our ashes are not your photo op.
Now breathe, because it is still only warming up. The transcript then drifts into the next kind of damage, the kind you can't put out with water. Rumors, relationships, private pain turned into public poison. It claims she was allegedly involved in spreading the rumor that Prince William was unfaithful to Kate, and worse, allegedly asking Kate directly how it felt to be cheated on. Not as a friend, not as support, but as a knife disguised as girl talk. And listen, people can argue all day about what's true, what's exaggerated, what's gossip, but what the transcript is doing is building a character profile, someone who doesn't just hear a rumor, they weaponize it. Someone who doesn't just watch chaos, they stir it and then step back to see what burns. It even brings up the baby brain comment toward Princess Catherine, framing it as another example of humiliation delivered with a smile. The undertone is clear, not clumsy, not accidental, calculated. And then, right when you think the story can't get more symbolic, it hits the wedding moment. Meghan walking down the aisle alone, front and center, described as soaking in the moment solo until King Charles stepped in halfway. The transcript frames it not as independence, but as a statement: I decide who matters. I decide what's seen. That's where the transcript dives into the next wave of moments, the naming controversy, the public behavior at events, the alleged disrespect, the scenes that had people whispering, is she serious? And why would you do that? And this is where the story stops being about a few bad moments and starts feeling like something much bigger. Because once the cameras keep catching the same behavior, people stop calling it coincidence. By the time the transcript reaches the later moments, the tone isn't shocked anymore. It's exhausted, almost resigned, like the narrator already knows what comes next. Another public setting, another uncomfortable pause, another situation where the room stiffens and people glance at each other, silently asking, did that really just happen? One of the most talked about moments comes when the focus shifts to children, and that's where criticism turns white hot. According to the transcript, there are repeated clips where Meghan's interactions with children are described not as warm, but staged, awkward, and strangely performative. Kids being repositioned, cameras clearly centered, smiles held just a second too long. The implication is brutal. Moments that should be natural allegedly become directed. And critics say this is exactly why people recoil, because children, like tragedy, are supposed to be off limits. You don't choreograph innocence. You don't turn it into branding. Then comes the naming controversy, Lilibet. The transcript doesn't treat this as a sweet tribute. It frames it as a calculated move that crossed an invisible line. Queen Elizabeth's private childhood nickname, used by only a handful of people in the world, suddenly becoming public property. Not asked, not clarified, just announced. And here's what makes this moment explosive. The claim that the Queen was not pleased, that she felt blindsided, and that even within royal circles, this was seen as a breach of something deeply personal. Not protocol, privacy. When the transcript reaches this point, the message is clear. This wasn't ignorance. It was entitlement. From there, the narrative pivots sharply into public events, walkabouts, ceremonies, formal appearances, where body language becomes evidence. According to the transcript, there are clips of Meghan stepping in front of senior royals, interrupting moments, redirecting attention toward herself while others visibly hesitate. The kind of micro moments that most people miss until they happen over and over again. And once people see it, they can't unsee it. The transcript then brings up staff, palace aides, assistants, people whose job is to make things run smoothly. It references reports of tears, complaints, emotional breakdowns, and the infamous phrase whispered behind closed doors, difficult to work with. Not once, not twice, repeatedly. This is where defenders usually push back hard. They say it's sexism, racism, resistance to change. And the transcript doesn't ignore that argument, but it counters with a brutal question: if everyone around you keeps crying, quitting, or filing complaints, at what point do you stop blaming the room? Then the story circles back to public grief. Again, memorials, funerals, moments meant to be solemn. According to the transcript, cameras somehow always find her. Angles always favor her. Expressions always linger. And critics say it creates the same unsettling feeling every time. Is this about respect or exposure? By now, the pattern is locked in. The narrator even points out how silence becomes strategic, how accusations are neither fully denied nor clearly addressed, allowing speculation to spiral. Because silence, when you understand media, isn't absence, it's fuel. The transcript also references the way interviews are handled, how tears appear on cue, how pauses stretch just long enough, how wording feels rehearsed. My truth becomes the shield, and anyone questioning it is framed as cruel, heartless, or malicious. And that's where the backlash truly explodes, because people don't like being emotionally manipulated, especially when they start feeling like their empathy is being used as leverage. As the countdown approaches the final moments in the list, the tone shifts from anger to something something colder. Distrust. The transcript suggests that viewers no longer react with surprise, but anticipation. What will it be this time? Who will be standing behind her? What moment will be turned into a headline? And then comes the quietest accusation of all, one that lands harder than any shout: authenticity. Or rather, the alleged lack of it. The closing argument of the transcript isn't that Meghan is evil. It's worse. It suggests she's performing humanity, and that once people sense performance instead of sincerity, the bond snaps. Because sympathy can survive mistakes, but it doesn't survive calculation. By the time the narrator reaches the final moments, the conclusion feels inevitable. These clips aren't disturbing because they're shocking. They're disturbing because they're consistent. Consistent framing, consistent timing, consistent presence at moments that shouldn't belong to her. And that's why this topic refuses to die. Because caught on camera doesn't argue back. It doesn't explain. It doesn't clarify. It just replays. Over and over and over again and over again and over again.